Okay, here's this question number 26 that someone asked me to explain. And here you have an organ called the pancreas, and then you have the bloodstream, which of course contains your blood. You have one thing that's going up or down in your blood. This is what's in your blood. There's one thing that we're looking at in this question, and that is glucose. Glucose is either going up in the blood or it's going down in the blood. Notice the up arrow and the down arrow. It's pretty straightforward. I hope that makes sense. Now, what's making that blood glucose go up or down? Something has to tell, because we're talking about homeostasis. And if you've read the chapter and you listened in class and you paid attention, then you know homeostasis is this feedback mechanism, this loop. Okay, something's going up, that signals something else to happen, step 2 to happen. Once step 2 happens, that makes the thing either go up or down. If it makes it go down, then it's a negative feedback because it's doing the opposite. If it's making it go up again, then it's a positive feedback mechanism. So something that's a negative feedback mechanism is slowing it down. Something that's a positive feedback mechanism is speeding it up. We discussed that in class, or at least Mr. Gusick did. So now let's take a look at what's going on here. Again, this is your bloodstream, your veins or your artery, and there's blood inside the veins and arteries, obviously. And then you have this thing called glucose, which we've discussed over and over again. You've memorized the structure of it. So this sugar molecule called glucose is in the blood, the primary energy molecule of the body. That's where we're going to get all our energy for food. This is, in fact, food. So here's this glucose in the bloodstream. What's making it go up or down? Well, there's 2 hormones involved here. The 2 hormones are both released by the pancreas. The first is insulin. Of course, if you look at it, look at where the arrow's pointing. As insulin's released, what's happening to glucose? I hope you said that insulin means lower blood glucose. And here you have another enzyme called glucagon. And glucagon, what's it doing to the blood glucose? Well, I hope you noticed that glucagon is raising blood glucose. Well, what do you think is going to tell the body, hey, lower the blood glucose, or hey, raise the blood glucose? What's going to signal that to the pancreas we need more glucose or we need less glucose in the body? Because remember, our body's objective, is to keep this range. If we're looking at a graph and we're looking at glucose, blood glucose level, okay, and we're looking at some graph, we want this, if this is some constant, some number, some level of blood glucose, sometimes after meals we'll go up, sometimes after we're exercising we're going to go down, but we're going to want to keep around some kind of normal. We don't want any kind of big spikes or big dips, okay? We don't want any of that. We want to keep a nice even level of our blood glucose, and in that way we can maintain this thing that we call homeostasis. If we don't keep homeostasis, then we're going to find ourselves in trouble. Because if we go too low, we're going to go into some kind of diabetic coma. If we go too high, we can have a stroke, or our blood pressure can increase. We can go blind or lose appendages. All kinds of things can happen when this blood glucose goes too high or too low. So we have to regulate it. We have to keep it within some range. It can go high, that's fine. It can go low, that's fine, but within a normal range. And the part that signals is this feedback mechanism. Oops, glucose is too high. Pancreas, do something about it. Oh, okay, let me release insulin. What's that going to do? It's going to lower the blood glucose. Uh-oh, blood glucose is getting too low. What are we going to do? Pancreas, blood glucose is too low. Okay, release glucagon. Glucagon raises blood glucose. That keeps going back over and over and over again, in some kind of loop. And what you end up with is a pretty stable, normal blood glucose. For most of us, diabetics don't have this insulin part is messed with, and so they don't have this. The feedback mechanism or the feedback loop is broken in some way, so they end up with really high highs and low lows, and they have to regulate it with either some kind of medication or some kind of insulin hormone shots. This is what we would call the normal range for glucose, and that normal range is where we're all shooting for when we're trying to stay healthy. Okay, the next three questions were a little more difficult. It says identify the four major organ systems that are involved in maintaining homeostasis. I'm going to go ahead and start with number 36 because it's actually the easiest one. The four major organ systems that are involved in maintaining homeostasis for humans, of course, are, and actually most vertebrates, you have your respiratory system, right? You have your circulatory system. Of course, you have your nervous system, and you have your endocrine system, right? Now, I am not going to be able to spell it here on the screen, but your respiratory system obviously is your breathing, okay? Your breathing. Your circulatory system is your hearts and lungs, your heart pumping the blood. The blood is obviously involved in circulating the nutrients and the oxygen to the tissues. The respiratory system is bringing the oxygen in. The nervous system is controlling the whole thing, helping control it, helping signal, helping receive information and send information out. The endocrine system is also helping with that. It's the hormone part. It's the part that's releasing hormones. And this is where you got your signal, your chemical signal that's telling things, hey, open this up. Hey, close this down. It's part of those feedback loops that we had discussed earlier. Okay, so what goes on next is number 30. Let's go and look at number 35. Actually, it's one of the more interesting ones. It's asking in what way are the functions of contractile vacuoles in amoeba and guard cells of a plant similar?